Hi everyone. I wanted to talk to you real quick about a few of the terms that are on your study guide for your test. This week's topic is the United States Constitution, and a few of the terms that are important for the week are constitutional checks and balances and the constitutional separation of powers, as well as the constitutional amendment process. A few things about each of those real quick, and of course you'll have a chance to ask about them in class as well. First is the constitutional separation of powers. You've all heard, I hope, of three branches of government, and in the federal Constitution, the federal government of the United States is divided into three branches. The legislative is first and supposed to be foremost, and then the executive branch is second in the Constitution, Article 2, and the judicial branch is in Article 3. The legislative power is vested in the Congress. Okay? The executive power is vested in the presidency, and the judicial power is vested in the Supreme Court and any other federal courts that Congress wants to create. The idea behind that is that there are, in a sense, three functions of government with respect to the law. If the government is supposed to be one based on law and not the whim of a king or a dictator or even a legislature, then you have to have laws made, that's the legislative function, the laws enforced, that's the executive function, and then the laws judged, the disputes about the law resolved, that's the function of a judicial branch, right? And so that is how the powers are separated, and they're very carefully done so that they're invested in three different groups. And indeed, those branches are elected or selected, I should say, in different ways. The legislative branch has two houses. It's got both the House of Representatives, which is directly elected by voters. You've got the Senate originally, which was selected in ways that the state legislatures wanted to. So senators represent entire states, and they were originally elected in a different way than representatives. Because of the 17th Amendment, we directly elect our senators today. Okay, but even though the way that senators and representatives are elected is similar, the fact that each representative in the House comes from a district of roughly 700,000 people, and at each senator represents an entire state, 2 senators per state, regardless of population. Those are still two different methods of election and of representation. Okay, and that division of powers is important even within the legislative branch. So you have to have approval from both to make a law, right? That's important. It's been said by, I think, the political scientists James Maroney and Rogan Kirsch, when the founders saw power, political power, they divided it. And that's even within the legislative branch, it's divided. Well, they also divided it into the other two branches. The presidency enforces the law, executes the laws, and that is headed by a president, and a cabinet is underneath the president of the different departments of the federal government. Now, again, the means of election is different from either House of Congress. Here we have the Electoral College, right? The Electoral College is chosen, in a sense, each of the electors are chosen by each state. It never really meets together as a college, as far as I understand, but each state gets a certain number of electors. Again, each legislature gets to choose how they select those electors, but the number of electors is equal to the number of representatives. So there's a population component for each state. The number of representatives in the House of Representatives in Illinois, that is 20. Okay, and then a number of senators, which for every state is 2. That's 2 for Illinois too. So 22 total electoral votes. All that adds up to 538 electoral votes, because Washington, D.C. also gets 3 electoral votes, the same as the smallest state. Okay, so the smallest states have 1 representative. Every state has 2 senators. The smallest states, like say Wyoming, smallest states by population that is, like Wyoming or Alaska, get 3 electoral votes as well. Okay, and then you have the courts, and they are the most removed from elections. The president selects federal judges, the Supreme Court level and lower federal levels, with the approval of the Senate. Okay, and so legislative, executive, and judicial officials are all selected in different ways from each other, and that contributes to the separation of powers and this idea of an independent judiciary, an independent executive. They can neither be said to be creatures of the other branches. You may have noticed in the Virginia plan, James Madison wanted the legislature to elect the president, the executive, and that was decided against, partially to give the president more power to be independent and not just be a creature of the legislature. Okay, so that's the separation of powers. Then we have checks and balances. I hope you're familiar with these. We'll talk about them more in class, but here's where the different branches not only are separate in function from each other, but they're also able to stop each other from being, abusing their power. Okay, so if Congress passes a law that the president thinks is bad, even if the House and the Senate both pass it, then the president can veto it. If that bill is so overwhelmingly supported in the House and the Senate, if both houses can get 2/3 of senators and representatives to override the president's veto, then it can become law anyway. Okay, the House of Representatives can impeach the president, which is what happened in December this past year, 2019. And then the Senate acts as the body to try the president. But you have to have 2/3 of the votes in the Senate to throw the president out, which is almost certainly not going to happen here in January of 2020. So that's another way in which we see checks and balances at work. The president selects the judges, the Senate has to confirm them. The president's picks for the cabinet have to be confirmed by the Senate. Okay, and you'll notice more of these as you read about them, but that's the principle of checks and balances, that no one branch is all powerful in the original constitutional design or the way it works now. The amendment process is intentionally difficult. Okay, it takes 2/3 of the states, which has never happened, to propose amendments, or 2/3 of both houses of Congress to propose amendments. Then they go to the people or to the states, and either 3/4 of the state legislatures or 3/4 of the state ratifying conventions have to approve an amendment in order to have it pass, okay, to be added to the Constitution. That has happened 27 times in the history of the United States. Okay, so we have 27 amendments. All right, now we'll have more chance to talk about all this kind of stuff as we go on, and I hope that you will have a good week, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you.